Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Business of Fun podcast. I'm your host, Dave Wakeman. Today's episode is brought to you by my good friends at Booking Protect, the global leaders in refund protection. Any listing, any sector, anywhere, Booking Protect has you covered with the world's most comprehensive refund protection product. To find out how you and your organization can partner with Booking Protect to deliver world-class customer service, a better buying experience for your customers, more peace of mind in their purchases, and maybe the most important thing is how you and your organization can create a new stream of revenue, visit them at www.bookingprotect.com. Once again, that's www.bookingprotect.com. I would also encourage you to bookmark the blog while you're there, because there is some great content in the pipeline about to come out. There's a way you can sign up and get an ebook about customer service, but we have a whole lot more coming, and you'll find all of that at bookingprotect.com. My guest today is Jacob Lauesen from FC Copenhagen. How great is this? Jacob is a friend of the podcast through another friend of the podcast, Martin Gameltoft from Activity Stream. And Martin said, you have to talk to Jacob. It's going to be great. And it did not disappoint. I'm going to share some numbers with you that Jacob talks about during the podcast that are phenomenal. I mean, these things are unbelievable. So Jacob talks about a lot of the marketing and ticket sales opportunities they've created, using digital media, a more focused strategy, create how FC Copenhagen has made themselves into a media company as much as a football club. It's all really great stuff, but these numbers are unbelievable. First off, on investments that FC Copenhagen has been making around ticket sales, for every dollar they spend, they have been returning $10 in new ticket sales. That's a 10-to-1 return on investment. That's fantastic, but that's not even the best thing. In putting dollars behind selling merchandise, they have been able to return $17 for each dollar they've invested, and I was just mind blown. And we got into all of this stuff, right? We talked about the challenge of encouraging the FC Copenhagen's board to allow Jacob and his team to have an unlimited spend, right? But that was tied to definite results and definite goals of the board and the business side of the team. We talked about how he tests and gets trial and error in his efforts to market. We talked about product development and subscription-based programs, campaigns, what the business model looks like. We talked about different streams of revenue, low-hanging fruit, how to build a campaign, how to target, how to drive attendance, how to manage media, how winning didn't necessarily solve many of Copenhagen's problems as far as attendance goes. We talked about how they have become a media partner to some of their biggest partners like Carlsberg and Adidas, and Hugo Boss, and it's like a really, really great conversation. This is like a really, a lot of like things I think that you can take action on. A lot of things that I think are going to be, maybe you knew them or you thought you had a grasp on them, but you weren't sure if you were actually doing the right things. This conversation with Jacob uncovers a lot of those. I think it's going to be really, really valuable for people. I'm excited for you to listen to this, and I really hope you'll let me know what you thought. But without any more from me, here's my conversation with Jacob Lauesen on the Business of Fun. I want to welcome Jacob Lauesen from the FC Copenhagen to the Business of Fun podcast. Jacob, how's it going?
Not too bad. Sunny days in Copenhagen.
Yeah,
so
it's beautiful behind you.
Yeah,
I'm so jealous.
No. We have a recently short summer span, so it's when it's there, everybody's happy. So and then FC Copenhagen just won the championship a few weeks back, so we're starting to get past the hangover phase now. So back to work.
Yeah, but whatever. You have as long as a hangover as you want. You win the championship, you deserve a few drinks or so.
And Carlsberg is our main sponsor because it's Danish beer, so of course drink responsible. But
I Hey, so you're going to fit right in on this thing. Hey, so you were introduced to me by a friend of the pod, friend of mine, friend of yours actually, Martin Gameltoft. So that was like really like something that, and then I realized you have a great connection with Martin. So that'll make this even more fun. But I want to start out because there's like so many interesting things that you're working on now that I don't even know if we'll be able to get to all of them. But I want to start out by talking about some of the work that you're doing around testing on the internet and selling tickets digitally. Because you gave me a really great example when we were talking just before we started recording about how you use a process of testing, learning, and adjusting to drive ticket sales and season ticket buyers to your tickets. And you use the example of Facebook. And kind of like as we've been trading notes back and forth to have the podcast, you've talked a lot about campaigns and being really thoughtful in the way you target and test and adjust. Can you give me maybe just a little bit of overview about your kind of marketing philosophy in general, and then maybe like take it down to where we're talking about some of the testing and learning and adjusting things that you're doing now?
Yeah, you can say the philosophy is, to be honest, a lot of trial and error. So I will give you some few good examples, but from every good example, there might be 5 bad, but we don't focus on those today. But what we're trying to do is basically, if we can, by using data, create relevance and use those segments, either it could be on it in any channel, could be mail, could be our own platforms, so or Facebook. But let's talk about Facebook. So what we're trying to do here in a test in the sales phase for season ticket is that we have, for instance, had a look at who are the people in Denmark who looks like the current season ticket holders the most. So who are the 1% Danish people on Facebook who looks most like the season ticket holders. And when we're doing a campaign to those, finding similar twins on Facebook, we're actually seeing a return on plus 20 on ad spend, even though that those have never bought a ticket for the match. So we tested and saying, okay, this is good. So we're just trying to push to those guys. But what about the looks like 2%, 3%, 4%, and 5%? And now we can see that we're expanding the segment quite a lot, because now we're not just talking to a small niche, but we're talking to a 5% of the population. And even though that those have not necessarily never bought a ticket, we can actually sell them season tickets because they have the same attribute as our most loyal fans. And it's quite interesting that you can actually find relevant people for your product based on data.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating, because the way that you talk about it is much different. It's like you don't start out with, I guess you start out very, very with as close as you can get to your current members, right?
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily try to broaden it at the beginning. You've decided that early on it's best to really, really narrowly define the data set that you're approaching. But a lot of people try to go a lot broader to begin with. How did you settle on that idea as being the best place to start?
You can say, I'm not sure if it's the best way to start. Of course, the most low-hanging fruit is of course your previous season ticket buyers, but this is a more creative example. But for this specific idea, it's more that we're doing a test phase. So we went to the board and said, in theory, we need an unlimited spend on marketing, as long as we're agreeing that the return is satisfaction. So we're in a test phase right now where we're doing hundreds of campaigns and I'm monitoring the return quite closely. And looking at the first 6 months of the test phase, we're seeing a return on ad spend across different channels, so Facebook, Google, etc. On 17 on merchandise and 10 on ticketing. And when you get these kind of returns, every, you can say, responsible board will then agreeing that as long as you can get these numbers, you just need to be creative all the time. You need to find the next segment that is relevant. And then we came up with an idea of trying to go niche. So what could be a specific good idea to work with. That could be working with this cluster of people, almost similar to our most hardcore group. And it was basically just that spur of a moment. It was a test case, and suddenly it just worked, and then just expanding. We're doing various other test cases. Some of them more successful than others. Example could be working with different kind of data sets on social demographic, what kind of age group, income, distance on specific standards. So we're seeing a lot of you can say good result in these tests.
Yeah, well, and the interesting thing to me is how you were able to go to the board and ask for an unlimited spend, but you tied it to specific results. How difficult was it to make that sale to the board? Because this is the first time you're going through something like this, right?
It is, and at the time I'm relatively new to the club, so I've been in FC Copenhagen in 10 months now. So this was the first time I met the board. So they didn't. I had a track record from previous job, but they didn't have necessarily any confidence in me. So we went there and saying, let us do you can say a test phase. They were, I'm not saying skeptical, but they're not marketeers. They are like owners of the club, and you can say and people from the sporting side, so the soccer side or football side of things. So to be honest, I need to put a lot of my credibility into this project, seeing if we can get the result. So I'm not sure if that's a good answer, but we managed to go to a test phase, and right now this is what they're talking about. So this is like I gave you the example. If you get a return on 17 on merchandise, this is like going to the casino and split a number and win every time. So no one in the board will ask you to play blackjack if you get a return on 17 for every dollar invested.
Yeah, although what they probably should be doing is just like, well, let's give Jacob a raise so nobody steals him away. So from your point of view, then, when you're testing these things, how do you approach the test? Like, how quickly do you start to see results? What are besides just money, right? Like that return on investment. What are some of the other things you're measuring to define success in this test? And then how quick, and I guess too, I want to make sure I emphasize this, how quickly do you see the results? Because sometimes that's a challenge for people, is that like they don't necessarily understand what the time frame of seeing results is going to be.
The results depend a lot on the project. So of course, when you're working with a one match thing, then you need relatively few exposures for people to convert, compared to when you're trying to sell a T-shirt or a jersey or a season ticket. Then you need more. So of course, the short term you will see faster results. But the way we are, you can say, going to it is. Sorry, could you get the first question again?
The first part of the question was, how do you design your tests, and then you answered the second part, which is how do you measure these things, and then So
we designed the test by looking at, you can say, beside a ticket sale or merchandise sale, by looking at a secondary objective. So is this a campaign in order to find new client? Is this a campaign in order to nudge people we know already? Do we look for like expanding to new target groups? So we have like a set of 7 or 8 different, you can say, secondary objective besides revenue. And then you can say that this campaign needs to find new customers in Copenhagen. What is a way to contact them or find them? That could be find for similar people on Facebook. Or if the campaign was to expand the basket size, then a campaign could be to give a small discount or a beer or something to people already buying, saying, hey, we need you to bring a friend to the match, do this. So we are, you can say, we are sub-tagging every campaign with a secondary objective, and then we are basically working with that data afterwards. But on most campaign we see the result quite fast. So we normally we see it within 48 hours, and then we are deciding if we need to add more spend or save the segment. We evaluate if we are seeing enough return, if we're seeing enough engagement, if we're seeing all this, you can say, different measure compared to what channel we're operating on.
Right. Now you said how much return to, and like whether or not it makes sense to continue. And the examples you gave were 17% for merchandise and 10% for the tickets. What would be something, obviously a negative return on investment would definitely be I'm pulling the plug on it, but like how little would, what kind of return would you say it's not worth it, or we need to tweak it to make, to decide you were going to make a change?
It's also depending on what time of year, because if we are in a phase a year where there's a lot of, I'll say, easy money, it's never easy money. But if we're in a phase where we're just launching the new jersey or season tickets, then I have higher expectation to the return on what I'm doing. So I'll give you an example from last December. We were playing a match in December, and December in Denmark means often snow. Yeah. So it's snowing outside. We're launching a Christmas campaign, and we're selling ugly Christmas sweater like never before. The return on the Christmas sweater is 10. The return on the match is 5. I need to have my board. I need to have my data aligned in order to go to the management group and saying, I will focus on the ugly Christmas sweater and not the football match. Because in a sports organization, you will also end up in a discussion saying, but 200 extra people understand, could mean an extra point, could mean the championship. Eventually, we could be king of the world. Of course, we'll never be that. But in that case, you need to have your data in order. Otherwise, you cannot justify to sell ugly Christmas FC Copenhagen sweaters compared to a match. And this is a good example, because this is the worst time of year to play football, but the best time of year to do campaign, because there's a lot of gifts. So in that phase of year, I would change quicker. I will change at a lower return on ad spend compared to this summer. Summer when we're doing season tickets and European matches, it needs to be a lot higher. Right. So, but in order to answer the question, we don't focus on much if it has less than 5 times return,
which is still a pretty phenomenal return on investment. So I mean that tells me a lot about how focused you guys are, because 5-1 return on investment is I have people throwing money at me all day long for for 3 or 4, and depending on the industry. So 5-1 being like, well, that's just not good enough for our efforts. That's pretty phenomenal, and that's great. And what I liked about the Christmas sweater example versus the match is a larger philosophy that I know you have, which is that like you spend a lot of time focusing on your priorities and not on the matches. And that's a challenge, especially here in the States, because a lot of times it can happen either by chance or it just sort of happens over time, is that teams get into the habit or get locked into a habit that they don't even want to be in about having to work on things built around whether or not they're successful or not, whether or not they're winning on the field, whether or not they have a new hot opponent or things like this. How does that work? Where you're working at managing according to campaigns. I know you just gave that one example, but if you give us like maybe a couple more about how you keep your priorities in line, and then how you do know when to measure selling a match as opposed to like just continuing to focus on your priorities. And if that didn't make sense, I can try to reframe it.
I will try to answer it. So, but the first thing you're saying. We in FC Copenhagen, we are a team who've actually seen over the last 10 years a decline in attendance, even though we won 6 out of 10 championship, which talking to every single sports asset in the world saying, if we're just winning the championship, then the people will come. But for us, that haven't been the case. We've seen now an incredible growth in this season, and we are hopefully back on track. And as I just mentioned to you, roughly a 40% increase on ticket with a value on compared to last time we won the championship. But it is also going to FC Copenhagen is a quite progressed organization. But talking with a lot of different sports assets, you get sometimes the feeling that you're working as a carpenter with only 2 tools in your box, and one of them is winning matches and the other one is free tickets. But the world is so much more complex.
That's good. I'm a fan.
And you'll never be successful in marketing if you think, because why are you hired in marketing if you believe in that?
Yes.
And I actually see a lot of very qualified marketeers fall into that position, and it's just, I don't know why, but yeah. Anyway, so a lot of it is strategy as well. So how are we trying to work at the longer term? How are we defining how a year will be in FC Copenhagen? Where do we need to earn the money? Where do we need to grow? Where do we need to do it? And what will be the sacrifice? Because we saw before we start working on this approach that for the majority of matches, the ticket sale would start when we started to talk about the next match, which was 7 days before. But at the same time, you could see when we asked the families then, when did they decide to come? They decided 65% was decided more than 2 weeks before, but we start to communicate about the match a week before. So we don't have a chance to talk to them. They actually, when they see our communication, they're actually thinking about the next match or the match after,
right? Not
the match we're trying to communicate, because we don't, you can say, have the right timing. So what we then decided to do is saying the A priorities, of course, season ticket, jersey launch, the match against our main rivals, a match where we can win the gold medals and stuff. We're starting a month ahead, even though we have, you could say, even though we might have 3, 4, or 5 matches in between. We have agreed with the teams that we are not using the players to talk about any match that's not their next match, because they need to be focused on the sport. So we are, of course, doing a lot of advertising below the line, contacting people directly, doing different kind of highlights in terms of what are the matches against this team normally. And then we, as an example, have spent the last year a lot of time actually making, I would say, in a friendly way, making fun of the city we're playing against. So we are the capital. So we are FC Copenhagen. So at one match we were having a you can say this city is famous for a cider, and we took like a giant bottle of Carlsberg and exploded a small bottle of the cider and have this whole like city rivalry. That's just one example. So did a campaign around that this small Danish city is coming to the capital, and just getting the fans involved. And the other part, and what is very important, is that a lot of clubs, as I see it, they focus way too much on the loyal fans. And to be honest, we did as well. So we can see that when we're getting into the data now, we can see that we are at the season ticket numbers. We're actually quite happy with the amounts we have, but we have quite few regulars, and we have even a smaller number as one-time buyers. And when you go down to these areas, you need to look at what expectation will these people have when they come to the stadium. So we're working with a customer journey where you can see where the people are. Are they happy with the facilities, whatever? And what we then are doing is looking into how many are happy, and if they're unhappy, how will that affect on the net promoter score? On are they willing to? Do they have the willingness to recommend this to other peoples? So we work with this in so many ways.
Yeah, no, I mean that sounds really great. There's two things in that answer that I want to ask about. The first one is something that you brought up earlier, and I meant to ask about it back then, which is like it sounds like you use a lot of different methods of advertising and a lot of different media to get your message out. And I was wondering kind of what are some of the tools that you use? Because everybody's familiar with, email and Facebook and like some of the social media stuff and things like this. And I think in the States especially, we kind of, like you were saying with the free tickets and winning, we get kind of constrained by what we've always done. And so I think it would be helpful for a lot of people to hear exactly some of the some of the tools and some of the medias that you use as a way of getting your message out.
Yeah, I'll say first and foremost, we're spending a lot of time in simple data mining and a paper notebook and Excel. So a lot of this groundwork is not a technical solution. It's basically an idea on paper, which we can actually extract from numbers in Excel. And then we're testing. And if it's successful, then we're trying to make that into our data model. But that's the first thing. We are working quite a lot with a platform called CrowdTangle, which is owned by Facebook. It's give you the capability to compare on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram on how you're doing to comparable assets. So I just did an comparison if FC Copenhagen was a team in MLS, and in terms of engagement, we will be ranked as number 3 in MLS after LA Galaxy and Atlanta United. Even though we are from a relatively small, I know MLS is not the strongest league in the state as well, but this is a thing, and in there you can actually look at what posts are overperforming from other assets. So compared to what LA Galaxy is doing normally, if they get a extremely largely reach, what are they doing that is overperforming compared to the algorithm? And it's a good way to look at comparing assets and look what are they doing that's actually working.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a platform we're spending quite a lot of time on. And then we are at the moment changing to a marketing platform called Agilic. But it's not up and running yet. But we have a lot of expectation for that work. Also because that we are starting to work a lot with triggers and if this then that, and yeah. So these kind of things that will actually be the main platform besides what everybody else is using.
Okay, no, that's interesting. And then the second part of this that I wanted to ask about was that you talked about direct content or direct contact, not content. What does direct contact look like from your point of view, right? Because in the States, a lot of time the direct contact will take the shape of a phone call. So yeah. A lot of cold calling in the States. So when you say direct contact, I was hoping you could define that for us.
Yeah, in Denmark, the minimum wage is $15 per hour. So I will not make a good business call of calling up people. I will be texting them, of course, from a you can say from an automated thing if it's necessary. For instance, when we're talking about season card renewal, but direct contact in the case of this will mainly be text, email, and some hyper segmented campaigns where people on Facebook will, like when we're talking so small segments that is like maybe 100 people, but it's not personalized, but we're still talking extremely small segments.
And when you do like something that's like extremely highly segmented, like you said, like 100 people or so, how difficult is it for you to target people that precisely?
It's not difficult if it's, for instance, an example we were doing this tonight is we were talking with people who we have a renewal deadline for the season tickets tomorrow. So people who haven't opened the email yet for the renewal, so they don't see our communication, we will send them a text tonight and we'll do a segment on Facebook. But of course, we need to, then they need to go on Facebook because otherwise they wouldn't see it. But it's a way to nudge people on other platform when our main contact is mail and they don't answer the mail or open the mail.
Right.
So we have a situation where these people, if they don't react by tomorrow, then their spot on the stadium that maybe have had for the last 20 years are free to sale. And then we need to, if this is a you can say, if this is they just forgotten, then we will end up handling these in customer service anyway.
Right. No, that makes sense. And one other thing that I think is interesting to me that I wanted to ask you about, because you have a season ticket deadline that's tomorrow, and we've talked a lot about merchandising and developing things according to your market. Besides a season ticket product, what are some of the other ways that people can either buy tickets besides either a season or a single ticket? Do you have like a subscription model or a membership model or, any kind of products like that help you expand the reach of the football team to a larger audience?
Yeah, we launched actually precisely a year ago. We launched a subscription model that you can say runs in the same way as your Netflix subscription. So it's not season by season. It's basically runs for the rest of your life until you unsubscribe. And over the first 12 months we have had this, we have had a subscription rate on less than 2%. And most of the unsubscription of subscription are actually upgrading their product. So in this way, you can do, like you can say, the season ticket have different characteristics. The in-sale phase is relatively short, and you can mainly do campaigns around that period of time. And each year, you need to start from zero. So this year, compared to last season, we have around 10,000 or 12,000 subscription, or you can say season ticket and subscriptions. But this year, instead of starting from zero, we're starting from 5,000. And it just gives us a complete different base to work out of.
Right.
Because half of our, let's just call them all regular fans of season ticket holders, they already signed up. And the good thing about this is that we can actually work on campaigns all year round. The season tickets, you're working on campaign on specific time of year. But in this case, sometimes, or maybe in February, you're suddenly ending up in a situation where you have 3 home matches in a row. And suddenly this is a perfect time for doing campaigns. Because then you can do campaign based on, hey, now it's a good time to buy a subscription. Exact the same way as they do on Netflix. Now we have this big premiere, sign up for this phase, for this period. And when you sign up for the subscription, you're fixed, you're locked in 6 months. But after that, you're free to go whenever you want to do.
And what is the value that is in the subscription? Because I know there's like the Oakland A's rolled out something that's probably sounds loosely similar, but what does yours entail? Like what do you give people as an inducement to stay?
The short answer is not much. They are just happy that they are paying in this way. They are happy that they don't have the trouble to renew. They are happy that they can pay each month. So we need to work on how we can build up the product and how we can add more into the product. But so far they are really just happy that they don't have to do anything and it's just running every month.
So basically, your subscription is a season ticket and it's broken up, so they just pay year round, right? So they always have a ticket to the game. Is that right?
Yeah, but it's a season ticket that will run for the next 20 years unless you stop it.
Okay. So you make it a long-term commitment to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so instead of me every season starts from zero, they need to tell me I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And so far, less than 2% have done that.
Right. And so it's an opt-out, not an opt-in. Okay.
Exactly.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the other part we're doing this summer is that we're seeing in some specific area of the stadium where a lot of the singing fans are that we are sold out, but at the December matches in snowy times in Denmark, we see a lot of no-shows on specific groups. For instance, the season ticket and the subscriptions. So what we're doing now to try to support that is that we are adding a new subscription model where you need to choose your ticket at each match. So this means that in a match where I expect a no-show on, for instance, 20%, I can allow people to choose from their another subscription to choose this match in a theoretically sold out area, but I can overbook it due to my expectation on the show on this specific match. But on the gold match and the high intense match, then they need to be on another area of the stadium. So in that way, I have a sold out area where at some matches I expect high no-show. But if I'm doing it in this way, I can make sure that the players are getting the best support because I have these specific stands at the stadium that will be packed even well in December.
That makes sense. So it's not just a subscription, like a one-size-fits-all fee, which is sort of the way that like a lot of it works here. It's like you're buying a subscription in a specific section, right? So if I want to be always in the singing section, that may be a product that you offer. And so then it's a way like, so if I'm in the upper deck, right, like I'm in the nosebleeds and that's where my subscription is, but like in December, you know that there's a hard time filling up the singing sections. As an added member benefit, you can get, Dave, you want to sit in the supporter section this match, and so that shows me the a little bit of additional value. So that totally makes sense. That's
and that also means for the December match that I can actually sell the capacity 130%.
Yeah, because if you're moving people down too, the thing is like at least in my experience, it might not be in that exact section, but you know the sections that are adjacent to it, you probably have room to put people there too. And we all know that spills over. It's totally fine. So everybody's great because if you had a bad seat and you get a good seat, nobody's complaining about that. At least not.
No one is complaining. No.
At least in my experience.
And that's the thing. So it is very interesting, and it's also interesting because that we actually just can use it in campaign all year round. And that's another thing where the season tickets is pretty much locked to the end of the season.
Yeah, and so how do I ask you this? So with these subscription products and your season ticket products, how what's the usage rate? Is it is it fairly high, or is it like and if you can't give me the exact numbers, that's I understand. I'm just kind of, is there like, you mentioned no shows, or is it like something when you buy in, the likelihood that you're going to go to the match increases a lot? Yeah,
I'll say I cannot give you the exact number, but it's depending quite a lot on weather and the winter is cold in Denmark. So we're playing in December and February. So in these matches, if it's not like an attractive opponent, then we will see, to be honest, too high numbers on no show.
Yeah.
But on the last 5 matches on the season, it was more than around 95% show. So then it's birthdays and weddings. So that's fine.
No, that's great. 95%.
But the average over a season is not satisfaction for us, but that is mainly due to winter matches.
Right. And I was going to say, if everybody's in Denmark, it's tough to you can't really schedule around the weather because the whole country gets cold in the winter. It's not like the States, like you can move stuff around. There's like warm, some places are still warm. You can't do that in Denmark.
Yeah. No, but that's that's. It's easier to being good at marketing than changing the weather. So
yeah, exactly. I haven't figured that out yet because if I do, I want to definitely go into that business. As opposed to I'm getting out of marketing, I'm moving into weather as soon as I can change.
Yeah, moving into changing weathers.
Exactly right. Instead of the revenue architect, I'll just become God. Now, let me ask you one more thing because I thought this was interesting as well because this is a trend that is starting to take hold a lot of places. And you mentioned to me how over the next few months and years, you're going to work to change the business model a little bit of FC Copenhagen. From one that's like a traditional sports team, how you might think of it that way, to more of a media company. And the first thing I want to ask you is, can you define for me what media company means from your perspective and from the club's perspective?
Yeah. And because when we put it in that way, of course, the fans will say, hey, I don't support a media, I support a football club. But putting it the other way, actually, what we are trying to say is that we are a content house. We're producing content. We're distributing content. And sometimes we do it via media, the television deal, and sometimes we do it ourselves. So we need to be able to find the right balance between delivering content to fans. They're waiting for this content,
right?
And we're seeing great results. And what we're seeing is that a lot of the commercial content is actually very well received. So we just need to find out who are in the market, so to say, for what kind of content, and how can we make it relevant based on data. So one example is that we did a campaign for Adidas, our jersey sponsors, and we are a smaller club, so Adidas don't do like a global or even a Nordic launch of our shirt. But we went to Adidas and saying, can we produce a video ourselves to do this? So we did a song together with a Danish rapper and Sony Music, and then both making a music video 4 minutes and a campaign video on 1 minute. I can share the video afterwards. And then we produce for Adidas and ask Adidas, hey, can we use your trademark? Can we do this and that? And they're saying, okay, this is very high quality. So they're coming to us and saying that right now we can use the official Adidas trademark, and we are, so to say, approved to produce a campaign video for Adidas in Denmark. And now we've just done it again for Hugo Boss. So we are relatively, compared to the size of most US clubs, we are a relatively small club, but right now we're producing content in high quality for Hugo Boss and Adidas globally, and making quite a good business of that. And then, of course, we're trying to find out what are the relevant fans to distribute this video to.
Right.
So this is a new business model that we actually, you can say, I don't like the word selling target group, but it is what we're doing, but we're doing it based on relevance.
Right.
Because we don't succeed if we don't deliver content that people are waiting for anyway.
Yeah. Well, you realize, and this is what it sounds like to me, because people ask me all the time, they go, well, what do you do? And I go, I'm not being a smartass when I say this to you. I'm telling you that my business is honestly being marketing me, right? And so you're telling me that, like, even though it's a football club, the goal and really the value you create and your ability to be successful over the long term is built on your ability to market the club year round. It's not just a 6 month for the football season. It has to be a year round property, because there's so much. Number one, football fans' appetite for content is insatiable, right?
Yeah.
I can only speak for myself, where it's like anything Tottenham Hotspur related, I'm reading constantly, right? It doesn't matter when in the season it is or not. And then reflecting the fact that, knowing that I have to continue to communicate and reach out and connect with my fans, because their attention is in demand by thousands of times a day. So I got to continue to stay top of mind with them, that there's also value in that. And that I can create something valuable for both my sponsors and my partners and my fans that doesn't have to be serious. It can be entertaining, it can be fun, and it can still be relevant and help advance everybody's goals. So it sounds like being very thoughtful about, just delivering more value to your audience.
Yep, you can say that. And part of our strategy, what we launched this January, is also that it sounds very almost philosophical when I say that we want to be, FC Copenhagen needs to lead the way, play with the best in the world, and use football for development of the city and create life quality for Copenhageners.
Oh yeah, no, that's great. I will. I can't share this story with you online but I can share it with you offline. But I did something. There's something specifically like that I can share with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and the interesting part is that suddenly, because we're doing this, it's easier to say than do. Mm-hmm. But one small example we had 2 weeks ago is that after we won the championship, we're having this humongous party, and of course there'll be trash everywhere. And then we do one post on Facebook together with Carlsberg and saying, okay, we had a party. We will have a party Saturday, but who will come Sunday and help us clean? Because we as a club, we want to leave the city nicer and cleaner than we compared to when we arrived. And suddenly 100 people are showing up. We're giving them a burger and they're having a good time. But this is different people compared to the one partying yesterday. But the story around us cleaning up after the party gets almost the same attention as the party. Yeah. And it gets more attention compared to a player launch the same day.
Yeah.
So this is us taking a stand for, we want to make an impression of a better life for Copenhageners.
No,
so of course
that's fantastic.
We cannot go to a heritage park and not leave it spotless afterwards. But it's fun that when you look at the data for this kind of stuff, it's complete different people compared to who's looking at the player stuff, compared to who's looking at the party stuff, compared to who's looking at the stuff that we are a responsible football club. So suddenly we are reaching out to another stratus of FC Copenhagen fans in Copenhagen or Denmark.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great. I mean, it's too, it's like from time to time I get the accusation leveled at me that I can be a little bit too political. And part of it is as I have a philosophy that's very similar to the one you just talked about, which is that, like, if I am a business person, right, or if I'm a business, I need to be a part of my community, and I have a responsibility to leave the community better than I found it, right? Because I'm only as strong as the community I exist in, and that's exactly what this means. And to me, it's good business, right? Because who wants to do business and live and work in a community that you aren't supporting and being a part of and committed to?
Exactly. And if it's good business now, this kind of business model will skyrise.
It's sustainable.
Year. Yeah, exactly.
Because people have a better impression of you. They feel more close. They feel closer to you. They see their neighbors out taking care of the community, all because of something you did. I mean, it's just a great model, and it feels good, right? I mean, it's an intangible benefit, but it's the right thing to do, but it's also good business.
And look at the partners in these three examples we're working with. It's Adidas, a global brand. It's Hugo Boss from the headquarter, and it's Carlsberg, of course, that's Danish as well. But this is three of our by far most, you can say, exclusive or most well-known partners.
Yeah.
And these are the type of partners that are willing to let us work as a media company.
Yeah.
When you did sponsorship 10 years ago, you talked with the head of sponsorship for any given company. 5 years ago, it turns out to be like head of marketing, because now sponsorship is part of marketing in most companies. But my guess will be within a few years, it will be head of media. So if you don't know how to talk and sell your target group, if you don't know how to work with this affinity compared to this affinity, we know that when people visit this stadium, they have 300% more affinity on luxury watch compared to X, Y, Z.
Yep.
Then we're out of sponsorship business.
Right. And you got to be able to paint that picture, because I think that's something that people miss that all the time, right? It's not so much that you have the eyeballs; it's that your eyeballs are relevant, right? And the people when they're coming to you, they're engaged. And something like the party and then the after party, you show it's tangible, intangible, it's emotional, it's all these great things that like any wise media buyer or marketer on the partner side would kill for, right? Because how much earned media are you achieving for that, and how much like positive media are you getting? And like now we've talked about it now for 10 minutes on this podcast, which like you can and it's like it just keeps going and going and going, and it's just it's a really wise way to approach the business.
No, and look at it, it's scalable. So how many times can you sell a stadium name? One. How many times can you sell a good branding campaign to the right audience with maybe use of players and potentially some exclusivity if the deal is large enough? To be honest, you can sell it until you don't want to sell it anymore, because as long as you create relevant content. So when the sales team asked me, Jacob, how often can Carlsberg talk to the fans? Every day. If they're relevant every day, I don't believe they can be.
Yeah, that's tough to do, but you could do it. Yeah.
But then it's up to you as a sales team saying, how much access will you give Carlsberg if they can be relevant?
Yeah.
But don't give them this kind of access. Give them what they of course have included in the partnership, and then find X, Y, Z, whatever partner who see this as a media buy and who see this as a way to access a target group with a match to their affinity for products.
Yeah. And another thing I like about what you just said here was that there's also a responsibility that you're placing on your partners, right? You're like going, we can give you the access, but we're not going to give it to you if you're just going to lay out some garbage. You have to be relevant, and you have to be like meaningful to the audience, or you're going to waste our goodwill, and you're going to waste your opportunity. And we're not going to allow you to do that. So we're going to protect that by making sure that it's relevant. And I think that's great, because it's difficult to turn down money sometimes.
Yeah. Of course, there will be a lot of content that's also just fun. But
there should be.
I will not say every piece of content we produce is meaningful, but of course, you get the idea that this is also just a way of you can say moving the company to try to build a better Copenhagen.
Yeah, no, I think that build a better Copenhagen as part of the mission of the club and the business, I think that's an awesome thing. I mean, that makes me happy. So call me what you will.
But you need to put that into the consideration. But we're building a better Copenhagen. But on the other hand, we have a scalable business. On the other hand, every time I invest $1, I get between 10 and 16 back.
Yeah, and not just a sustainable business, not just a thing. The thing is a growing business, and so a business that is growing at a tremendous clip, which proves a point that when people say, "Oh, we can't do this, we can't do that," or doing it, or we have to do things this way. I was like going, no, if you stand by your principles, if you have a clear vision for who you are, you understand the value you create, you understand the people who want it, and you understand how to reach them. you can create tremendous value. You can make a lot of money. You can do it over and over and over again. It's sustainable. It's fun. It's fulfilling. It's all these really positive things, and and I think it's just a great example. And I really hope people take this conversation to heart.
Yeah, that's good. But just put the story about building a better Copenhagen compared to the more hard facts. So we saw a compared to last championship season, a growth on 22% on season ticket, a growth on 65% on single match ticket. Combined, that's a growth on 40% tickets. We saw a growth on 46% on a European ticket campaign. And in the main test phase for the merchandise, we saw growth on 44% in the web shop in November and December.
Yeah, let's take it back to the hard numbers.
It's easy playing build a better Copenhagen when you get double digits in all your KPIs.
Yes, right. I was going to say, when you're like almost at 50% of like your revenue increase, it's easy to be like totally like, I love everybody. Jacob, man, this has been awesome. How do people find you on the internet? Where do you want, or do you want them not to? Like, sometimes I say I don't want them to find me at all. No, where can they find you?
They're welcome to track me down on either LinkedIn or Twitter.
Okay.
My Twitter account is sometimes in Danish, but always happy to catch up, and always happy to share examples. I am definitely for sharing. I can always help by sharing a slide deck if people want it. I feel this hospitality when I'm traveling, if it's China, Australia, or the US. So I'm always happy to help. Quite busy, but I'll try to do it anyway.
No, that's great, and and I'm so glad you were able to take the time to do this. So thank you so much.
There it is, my conversation with Jacob Lauesen from FC Copenhagen. Tell me what you think. Send me an email. It's my name, Dave, at davewakeman.com. You can find out what I'm up to by visiting my website. It's www.davewakeman.com. The website's going to be getting a little bit of a refresh, I think, over the next couple of weeks and months. I'm going to add a shop and some calendar functions and everything else. To keep up to date immediately with me, you can visit me on the Twitter, at David Wakeman. If you do know the person who has that at Dave Wakeman Twitter handle, let me know. I really want it. Connect with me on LinkedIn. If you like what I'm doing with the podcast, if you found some value, I'd love it if you'd share it with just one person. If you're a longtime listener or a subscriber or a longtime listener and not a subscriber, I'd love it if you'd subscribe. If you're a subscriber or a listener or you just love it or hate it, I'd love it if you'd leave a review. We are on most of the major platforms, if not all of them now. You can get us on iTunes, you can get us on Google Play, you can get us on Stitcher and SoundCloud, I think, and all of these places. And if you could leave a review, suggest it to a friend, subscribe, any of those things really help, and it makes sure that I continue to be able to get really great conversations like this one with Jacob, the one I did last week with Patrick Ryan, the one the week before that with Tony Knopp. The feedback on those episodes has been tremendous. Everybody seems to be learning a lot. I know that I am, and it seems to be a great thing that we're doing here. So if you can subscribe, share the podcast with friends and colleagues and coworkers and people you think might learn something from this, that would help me tremendously. And always, I want to encourage you to visit my friends at Booking Protect, the global leaders in refund protection. Any listing, any sector, anywhere, Booking Protect has you covered. But it's more important than that, because Booking Protect is not just a vendor. They are a partner. And as partners, they deliver some of the greatest customer service in the world delivered digitally in a way that is unmatched by anybody else. They offer the most comprehensive refund protection product anywhere in the world, including things that are not covered by anyone else. It helps give you and your customers greater peace of mind, and it makes for you the process so much easier. You find them visiting them at www.bookingprotect.com, and while you're there, make sure you check out the blog, because there is a lot of content there now. There's a lot of new content coming. We're going to really be driving some more interesting things that out through the Booking Protect website. There's really an exciting announcement coming up in the next few days. You're going to have a chance to see me and Booking Protect CEO Simon Mabb in some places you've never seen us before. And I think it's going to be very, very cool for people. So check them out, www.bookingprotect.com. And until I talk to you again, take it easy. Thank you for listening. And remember, share this thing with your friends and colleagues and coworkers. And thanks for being here. All right, take it easy.